How you doing, Skylar?
Good, how are you?
Good. Are you nervous about polishing?
Yes.
Really?
No.
Okay. All right, so we've prepped everything as far as wash, chemical decon, clay tile treatment. We've assessed the paint to figure out how thick, how thin, and the approach. What polisher do you want to use?
Rupes.
Rupes. Good
Or
choice.
Rupes. Which one?
Rupes.
Rupes?
It's Rupes. It's Italian. Rupes. So while Rich meticulously adds to all of the trim.
He's a beginner detailer. I just didn't want to have him run into any problems like white pad runs over a black rubber piece and then it's like, you know what I mean?
So when it comes to polishing, the first things that I want to do is our test spot. I like to do the hood because honestly, it gives me the best visual demonstration. Normally, it can create a little bit of work for you if you struggle to find the right product. Sometimes it can add, like, Rich, have you had like an extra hour of work sometimes with a test spot because you're like, oh, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. And then once you finally find it, then you have to go back and blend it. So,
as crazy as it sounds, I did the same exact spot, passenger side of the hood. I don't know why, but it just seems
yeah,
like
I always
the
just do the hood because then, I just feel visually I can see it a little bit better.
Before we get too much further into the video, Stoner wanted to test out a new product that is coming to market, and Skylar wanted to put it on his vehicle for test purposes. He'd never polished his vehicle, so we had to do that, so we thought this would be a great opportunity to show you guys how to learn polishing. But before we start polishing, it's important to understand the pad and the polisher.
I always tell people start off with the least aggressive and work your way forward. So you want to...
Least aggressive pad or polish?
Both.
Yes.
So you can start off, if you come up in with, okay, major defects, I'm just going to hit it straight up with a microfiber, you've immediately locked yourself into a potential two-step. Okay. Whereas if we start off with the least aggressive method and work our way forward, it's going to be a lot easier to undo whatever, whoops, that wasn't the right product or pad, but you're going to be able to see, did I remove swirls and scratches? Did I have clarity? Did I finish down properly? If yes, that's all you need. If no, okay, then either you step up either your pad or your product or both. Sometimes you can have a medium polish with a white foam pad. It's not going to do much because the pad isn't actually breaking down the product properly enough. You step up in density with foam and it can have a little bit more aggressive. It can finish down, it can correct perfectly. But sometimes if you have super soft paint, if you come in too soft of a pad, your pad can actually induce the marring. Okay. Because you've got a dual action polisher that's basically oscillating this way as well as this way. It's in dual 2. And as that backing plate is kind of bringing that pad back around, if it's too soft, it will actually create the marring because of the motion of the backing plate. So sometimes soft paint, you might need a little bit more aggressive pad to finish down properly. That's why Ivan will tell you, like, sometimes a rotary actually finishes down better than a dual action because you don't have that dual action. You just have one rotation. I have worked with Ford paint enough to know that it is more medium.
Yeah.
It's not super soft and finicky.
You'll oftentimes hear detailers use these terms to classify paint. Hard, medium, soft, even sometimes finicky or otherwise as a pain in the ass. But if you have harder paint, you can use a heavier correction method, maybe even a microfiber or a wool pad, a compound, and it might finish down decently. Medium paints, you don't want to use something super aggressive, but maybe more like a medium polish and a yellow foam pad, and you should be able to correct and finish down perfectly. Softer paints, those can be a whole nother nightmare. Those can be your Teslas, GM paint, Jeep paint. Oftentimes, you can't use a heavy correction method with them, or if you do, you're going to have severe micro-marring or haze that you're going to have to indefinitely do a two-step and try to remove the haze or marring.
We've got 3 different pads here from Rupes. We've got their finishing pad, we've got their fine polishing foam pad, and then the coarse cutting foam pad. So when it comes to starting with the least aggressive, working our way forward, this is where you would want to start. Then if that's not giving you decent correction, then you would step up to the yellow foam. And then if you find that the paint is super hard, like we're talking German paints, Mercedes-Benz, Corvettes, sometimes even Audis are like super hard paints, and you've got a lot of defects on the paint, you're gonna need something a little bit more aggressive. If you don't want, they do have a wool polishing pad that is like dynamite. So we have the white ultra finishing pad, we have the yellow foam, and then we have the blue coarse foam pad. If you were to just feel these, you can feel a difference in sponginess and also just coarseness.
That feels like sandpaper.
Yeah, there's a lot of precision science that goes into Rupes. And one thing that he did tell us at the Creator Summit is that all of these products are designed to synergistically work well together. For balance, they design, he was telling us that actually in Europe, vibration is actually like a mandated requirement for their devices. It's not in the US. So when you're using the entire system of the polisher, the polish, and their polishes, all three of those things combined are going to give you balance, less vibration, and it just gives you a more enjoyable experience. Like I've worked with tons of different polishes and or polishers, and after a while, you get like vibration in your hand.
Yeah, right after you're done. Like when you're mowing the grass, and then at the end, you're like, what the heck?
Yeah, and this you'll notice a lot less of that. So before we even kind of get started, have you worked with a polisher before?
Once.
Okay. We're getting ready to apply a ceramic coating to this vehicle. So they have a couple different products. We don't want to use their Uno Protect. That has protection within it. They have their Uno Pure. They have their DA fine polishing compound, and their high performance DA coarse. Oftentimes you compare the pad with the product. It's going to give you better results. When you are getting ready, we'll just put like 4 pea-sized drops on here. You don't need a lot. There's a couple different ways that you can prime. Some people will, and I'll have you handle this, put the cord over your shoulder, because people on YouTube are going to yell at you if you don't. You can either, so David from O'Burke, basically instead of kissing it out, he will just turn the polisher on, spread it out, and then that's prime the pad, it's prime the panel, and then he'll come back, add some fresh product, and then he'll go that way. So, or you can just do a standard, kind of beat it out. It really,
that's how I know how to do it.
it's one way or another. You know, there's different ways. So what I'm going to have you do is just kind of, you want to hold it, keep it square within your shoulders. So you don't want to work beyond this. One, it's going to be a lot of user fatigue. You're going to find that the polisher could be thrown off balance. So what you're going to want to do is just, your hand is going to go under here. There's a locking mechanism on the side. And you can just basically get used to the feel. We'll kick this out. And then when you come in to do your passage, what we do is we do kind of like an S pattern. Overlap by 50 and then go down. You don't need to have a lot of downward pressure. You'll find that it will stall. So you can literally just kind of keep a hand under it. Since we kind of just primed that, we'll put a little bit of fresh product on it.
Chelsea, do you ever mark your pads? Like, I see your backing plates marked.
Yeah, so you'll see here, I marked it. If you see that black mark rotating, then you know that you don't have stall. Now with the Rupes, I did learn from Jason that stall is actually designed within the device to help prevent burning paint. So if you're going over ridges like this and it stalls a little bit, it's still correcting. They actually said, I think it only reduces the correction by like 12%. So even though it's stalling, it's still correcting, because you might not have the dual action, but you're still having one of the orbital spins of it. But it's engineered into the device to help reduce the risk of burning. So that's why, like, there's so much science that I didn't realize. I honestly wasn't a fan of this because of the stalling action. But then when he said that to me, I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, and I can appreciate that. So go ahead, make sure you have enough slack that it's comfortable and it's not pulling at you.
So if I'm ready, should I do the right?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just gonna be more comfortable. So you've got fresh product on there. So just once you get it turned on, just kind of get a feel for the polisher. And you don't, like I said, you don't need a lot of downward pressure. Just kind of have your hand under here and here. It's gonna be a lot more enjoyable for you. And what you're doing is you're letting the pad and the product do the work. You don't need that extra downward pressure, because then you're going to actually create a lot more heat on the panel, and heat is not your friend when it comes to, you want to try to keep the panel as cool as possible. So, you know, we're going to focus on an area about right here. So with a hood of this size, I will divide it into 4. So let's just go ahead. We'll do your test spot here. And I would say what you're going to do, we already did like one little quick pass here, but you can go over it a second time. But what I will do for a paint enhancement is, if we're doing this section to here, is one full pass here, go up in the same kind of S pattern, overlapping by 50%, and then another, and then I'm done. So it's basically like 2 or 3 passes, and then we'll wipe off the residue, we'll inspect the paint and see where we land. Okay, start off at a slow speed. when you first start off, and then kick it up to about like 4.5. Let's just see where we land there. We can try 5.5, but you know, that's where you're gonna generate more heat. And as far as arm speed, I am not the type that really takes forever. Especially with paint enhancements, I'm looking to be efficient and quick. So what we're gonna do is just kind of move at a clip like this, and then just kind of go down. If you find that you've got a heavier scratch that we need to kind of sit on that, we can sit on that.
Okay.
Versus coming in, because if you do start to notice an issue, it's a lot easier to fix an issue if you're moving faster versus, oh, I'm just going at this pace, and then before you know it, you've done a little bit more damage. So you can better monitor the paint, but as you're polishing, you can see we have a little bit of translucence here. As we work that polish down, you'll see through the product even more to be able to see. Now we have not a whole lot of lighting here. Rich just brought in some, so you can even use like paint polishing lights if you want to be super,
headlights.
you know, but because again, paint enhancement, I'm not necessarily chasing all those defects. If you are really wanting to do more heavier correction, that's where, you know, if you have a light over top of it to be able to see through the polish, you're gonna be able to see those defects a lot better. But get that lock in.
What lock?
The lock mechanism on the side. So
press
squeeze
it.
the trigger,
Okay.
lock it in, and then you can take your hand kind of off of that, and then just get a feel for how the polisher works. And do you see that backing plate spinning freely?
Yeah.
Okay. Once you put pressure on that, it's gonna not rotate as much. See that? You can see that black mark. So that's where if you find that it's stalling, just kind of ease up, but make sure that you are keeping flat on the panel. So go ahead, come over here, and then go down. Yep, overlap. And when I have ridges like this, what I'll tend to do is make that a full section. So that way I make sure my pad is staying flat on the panel.
This is Skylar's vehicle. This is the perfect way to just start polishing. Get a polisher, practice on your own vehicles, on family and friends before you do this professionally. What Skylar is doing here is a perfect way to just get a feel for the machine, learning how to balance it and keep that machine kind of parallel with the curvature of the panels. Some beginners may struggle with lower ends of the panel, and that's where you just really want to focus on bending your knees and getting low with the body of the vehicle. And just note, he never really turned his speed up. We were at about speed 2.5.
All right, so you did a great job. You can see right here, even though we did a fine polish, like, do you notice in the lights here, you have medium swirls here on the paint? Even with the ultra fine polishing, we've removed a majority of those.
You can see exactly where
circular.
it stops.
Yeah, and that's why I said you'll see kind of that moon sphere pattern of where because we didn't tape it off. And honestly, I don't like taping off for test pots because then you have to chase that line. But even just a quick polish, we did 2-3 passes. It removed a majority of the defects. The paint is a little bit more flat on this side. We've got a deeper hue of color, and it just restored gloss and shine. And we didn't have to be super aggressive. We just did 2-3 quick passes. We have some deeper line scratches right here.
Yeah.
And I can go over a quick technique on how to kind of work on that scratch if you want. If we come in here with the swirl finder light, unless you're really looking for some of those deeper lines, you're not going to see it with the naked eye.
Say we got like 70% of it.
I would say 70, 75, if not a little bit more. So we'll just go over these areas that the pad wasn't making as much contact, like right here. I would say maybe this ridge right here, just go over it a little bit more. And what you'll do is with your pad, you're not gonna get 100%, but just kind of focus on keeping your pad, making sure that backing plate is oscillating. It's not like a rotary where you gotta come in at like a 45. It's more just like keep it like this.
Okay.
I'm focusing, like this basically is the flat side that I am trying to focus on. So here, and then on these handles, just kind of curve with it, but just keep that pad flat. Again, here, just keep that pad flat. You don't want to like come in here because if you're trying to bridge that gap, you're not going to make contact in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's where when we've got kind of these curvatures, we're going to just focus where the pad is going to be spinning freely. And then if we have to, we'll come back in and kind of divide that up. Okay. I know that's an awful sound that it's making. And like some of these more intricate, smaller pieces here, that's where you'll just kind of have the pad sitting like this versus trying to do that. So just wherever that pad is going to be coming in flat and making contact with the paint, that's where you want it to be. And that's just where you're going to have to learn how to just kind of observe that backing plate spinning and just keep a light touch on the paint or on the polisher. Every person's going to be a little different in their approach, but to me that helps me systematically stay consistent throughout the whole vehicle. And I'll start off on the hood, and then I'll do the roof, the trunk, and then I work my way around the sides.
Okay.
That just helps me be a little bit more efficient. So I'll just do it real quick just to show you. So even if I'm here, I was thinking that it was spinning freely, so we might have to actually break it up a little bit. But see how the pad is still, and we'll bump it up. It's not wanting to really get in there 100%.
Yeah.
It's still correcting, but you might have to just kind of adjust the angle so you get a little bit more.
Okay.
But because of the device, it might not necessarily correct 100% because it's trying to prevent you from damaging or burning that section. But even if we sit there, we're not really going to be doing damage. I'm getting better correction here, and you can kind of do a little wobble sometimes if you've got a wonky angle and just get it in there. I just wanted to kind of show you. It's easier to sometimes show you when you get into some of these weird curves like this.
Like different techniques that you can use.
Yeah. And that might have been all that we needed on those sections. So I might actually mix up some O&R. But yeah, you can see we got a little bit more correction here.
Yeah.
We were able to get a little bit of that oxidation off of your headlights. That polish is just drying up on us quickly. So it's possible we just didn't have enough on there.
Is there a reason for that? Like, why does it dry up?
We probably were working it too long because of just talking and stuff like that, and we didn't have enough product. And sometimes, honestly, you do need to clean your pads after every panel.
Okay.
You don't, Ivan LaCroix has been teaching me, and it's something I've come to believe in, that you don't want to put a dirty pad on a clean panel. So I like to do a rinseless wash to wipe off residue. It's a little bit safer than just taking a dry pad, and like all of that little bit of residue that we left over now is gone. If you have dusting, it's a great way to just quickly wipe. There are some rinseless washes on the market that actually you can use them as like a panel prep wipe, but we're still going to do a panel prep wipe on this when we're done, just to make sure.
Oh yeah, we never did the panel prep.
Well, we're not ready to coat.
Oh, yeah,
we'll do the
true.
panel prep wipe at the very end. Because to me, there's no point in doing a panel prep now, because I'm going to get more dust.
I totally forgot. I thought we were on the paint ceramic.
Efficiency, Skylar. That's what we're all about.
The whole car, and then we do it.
So then we're also going to do a pad washer. So I have a little bit of solution in here. Just put it down to a low speed. Bump it up. And now we've primed and cleaned our pad, and we can keep moving. Section by section, we will just do that.
That's pretty interesting.
You never used one?
I've seen them, but I've never used one. They weren't popular back when I was teaching.
Look.
I know. So sweet. That's so much more satisfying
Yeah.
than trying to do it.
So just try to spin it out as much as you can, and I'm gonna actually move it away from the car because sometimes you can like sling residue on it. So we'll put it over off to the side. But after every panel, we'll just go ahead and do that, and that way you're gonna work cleaner and efficiently. You're gonna get better correction. You don't want all that old polish and clear coat that you've abraded off. It will gum up, and it will prevent the products from working properly, and you'll create more heat and less efficiency. And it honestly, it keeps the pad cool, and that way. That is McKee's 37, their pad cleaner, but we can try to do a little bit of spot correction on those areas. Did I get you?
If I mess up, blame Chelsea.
It's your car.
Yeah, it's my car. That's true.
I'll watch you a little bit before I just hit loose. Because then we'll do a little bit more correction on that roof and then your trunk.
Yeah.
And then I think the sides we'll just kind of all do together. So you got like some major deep scratches here. And my fingernail, I mean, you've smoothed down the edges greatly.
You just throw it on the roof head.
But we could, I think, blend this a little bit more. And you've got way, like a lot of paint to work with. This was like 7 mils.
Was
And
it?
This was like 7-8 mils.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
so
those were
the rest
sprayed.
of this panel is pretty much dialed in. So what we're gonna do is just a little bit of wet sanding on this section here.
Gone.
The SK1 KXK Dynamics, we're going to use the white block. We've got
so
some
pissed with how
different
cleaned up
grits
that
here.
came.
We've got a 1500, 2000, and 3000. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to try the 1500, and then we'll finish down with 3000, and then we'll compound. All right, so we have some rinseless here. I'm just going to kind of wet the pads in that. And actually, let me get. Do you have your O&R bottle? So we're just going to come in here and just little X's.
So while this is more of an advanced skill, I wouldn't recommend a beginner try to do wet sanding right off the bat. You want some experience with scratch removal, with polishing, with working with different pads and compounds to understand how they work, how to correct out defects on the paint, and how to finish down properly.
So you can see we're kind of smoothing down that. Oh, you got a beast. Sorry. We're smoothing. No, you're fine. We're smoothing down that ridge. It's becoming a little bit less noticeable.
Do you want a microfiber?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I just needed to see through it real quick. So it's kind of an X pattern, and you're gonna, that way you don't have like a straight line, and we're going up over the ridge. If the scratch was this way, we would be going over top of it.
Like perpendicular to it.
Yeah. And I can already see like it's getting smoother and smoother. So whatever we do here with the 1500, we have to double with the 3000. Now 3000 is not very aggressive at all and I'm not pressing hard. I'm literally just like holding it. You can see I've got like a teacup grip on it.
Pinky up.
Yeah. You don't have to have the pinky up, but if David was clear, like you let the pad do the cleaning, not you scrubbing. So
It's definitely what I'd be doing.
yeah,
It's like,
I don't want to go too much further because we have to like undo those scratches with the 3000.
That's an excellent piece of advice for all sanding. Let your tool do the work. You shouldn't be
All right,
Yeah.
so we're gonna
scrubbing.
getting into it.
like right
Wow, it's
there.
already
I would
so
say,
much leveled out.
yeah. I mean, you're not going to see quite as much of that, so we're gonna go over that with the 3000, and then see where we land.
Can I touch it?
Yeah, you can touch it.
No.
No,
What are you doing? Your
nice.
nail?
You scratched it.
Swear to God, if you scratch that.
It's all scratched. Oh, that's stupid.
So now, when we come in with the 3000, we need to go a little bit wider with the sanding marks, so that way it will finish down. 3000 is very easy to compound out. You can almost use a foam pad and medium polish. Most compounds are going to remove 1500 sanding marks, but we want to try to be mindful of how much clear we're removing. So what we're going to do is just come back in, go a little bit further. And we have to go double what we did with our 1500. I didn't count. I just, we went over it probably 10 times or so. And again, I'm not scrubbing. I'm just letting the sanding paper do the work.
So you want to do 20 now? Is that what you're saying?
Ish. It's not like an exact. But you want to go until you have sanded away the 1500 sanding marks. And you'll be able to kind of tell.
I like that your sandpaper kind of has like an interface pad in the back to give it some cushion rather
Yes.
than just being a flat.
And there's two different interfaces that you can use. There's a white, which this is the softer of the two. It's got a little bit more of a spring to it. And then the black is more for like aftermarket paints. We could have technically used that, but I'm just trying to be a little bit more conservative.
Yep.
But you can see as we're sanding, you see less and less. We have the drag strip right outside.
Yeah. It did sound like a trash strip, actually.
It's always in my videos. All right, so we'll come in. Dry this off. And again, I'm not expecting to get 100% of this. I'm just wanting to.
Color's expectations are set right.
We will use compound to, like a microfiber and a compound to try to go over this.
Microfiber, like buffing pad?
Yeah.
Huh?
I said we did it in the parking lot while you weren't looking.
Yeah.
Skylar, somebody really messed your car up.
I'm just trying to get this as dry as possible to see if I've removed my sanding marks.
Get our microfiber. Fingers crossed.
Did you see fingers crossed?
Yeah.
The guys from Stoner brought this polisher. This is the Rupes Hybrid Mini Polisher, and this thing is so cool. It works so flawlessly. I kept telling them they could pay me with this polisher, but they didn't bite. Rich had already done a heavy correction on this trunk to try to remove the scratch with just a microfiber and had done some major marring. So we had refined that already, so this is the second time polishing this section. I'm glad to use a 3-inch polisher to kind of concentrate our correction. But the microfiber and coarse compound did a great job at removing our sanding scratches.
It's a thick one.
It is a thick one. Yeah, it's pretty hot, so we're just going to give that a second. Rich, you totally screwed up his paint when you keyed it. No, and I mean, we remove the sanding scratches, and not every scratch can be, like, removed. Like, this one here, we might be able to bring down a little bit. You did heavy correction on it. You know, and I mean, you can try to blend it so it is less jagged, but at the end of the day, you're wet sanding, David said, you're wet sanding to improve, not to remove. So we've at least, like, blended it a little bit, but if we were to really try to chase that, I think that would be breaking you down to almost factory paint. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll do a quick, I'm going to hit this with 3000 instead of chasing it with the 1500 and just see if we can blend it down a little bit.
Sure.
So
the typical rule of thumb is if your fingernail catches on the scratch, you're not going to be able to remove it. We're just trying to blend it so it's less noticeable. And instead of being more aggressive on this spot that I believe we should be able to get with just 3000 grit, we're going to just go over it a few times with our 3000 grit, compound, polish. This one definitely was greatly improved. We've got a bigger scratch on the roof that we need to address next though. You'd be surprised, but wet sanding can actually be more gentle on the paint than compound and polish.
and like we remove the sanding marks.
Yeah, I might switch to using this wash to get the polish off it.
It's so much safer. We've got haze from the micro marring, but it removed all the sanding scratches. So we'll just come in with that white pad, finish this down. This one I think is a little bit less noticeable. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as deep. This one, you know, your SOL.
Yeah.
But just, you saw how quickly, like we went over it with a wet sand.
Yeah.
Several passes, and just 2 quick passes removed that.
It looks way better than what it looked like from the start.
Well, let's go ahead and we'll finish that out.
If you ever encounter micro marring, normally what you need is a polish pad and a finishing polish to remove that marring. On some finicky paints, you might need a particular polish to finish down properly. My favorite for finicky paint is Optimum Hyper Polish.
Video of Rich clinking Chelsea in the
Right.
head with the
With the light.
So we removed all the micro marring. And this one, I mean, it is way less noticeable. Before I even started, like you could see it from the camera. This one, yeah, it's super deep, but like you're only gonna notice this one if you're on top of it. So you put a bucket on the car, it
No,
looks?
that's what it looks like. You
That's
don't
what
know
it, I have no idea how that happens.
Someone put a bucket on your car.
I think
That's
it's
what it looks like, right?
luggage
Okay.
or actually when I was moving out of my mom's house, I might have put like a laundry basket there
Oh, that could definitely do that.
with my socks on
Yeah,
it.
I don't know why people think their car is a shelf. I mean, purses,
I know, tell me about it.
suitcases. I see them
Down.
take, you know those, the mats that have the teeth on the bottom? Like
Oh,
they'll put
yes.
them on here to clean something, and I'm like, no, don't do that.
Oh, nice work.
Like I don't even like touching it with my skin, let alone like
I
something
feel when
hard.
we were doing this, if we weren't already polishing it, I wouldn't be
Yeah,
doing it.
so what I'm gonna try to do, this is, Rupes actually has their X-Cut foam pads. This is a 3000 grit. This is way less aggressive than what we were just using.
Half as aggressive. right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it'll look like severe car wash scratches. So we're just going to come in. And again, I'm not like scrubbing. I'm just going over it.
It says the car is shaking back and forth.
That's my whole body. I'm using my body. I'm just going in a circular motion over some of the more severe stuff because it was kind of on the outlier versus having to do the entire circumference.
I like the applicator you have. The scrubber.
Yeah, it's
handle,
just like
nice.
for hand polishing.
It keeps a super even pressure rather than having finger
Yes.
spots.
And it's foam backed, so you can put these technically on a polisher, but sometimes I get nervous about
Yeah,
doing
that's a lot
that.
going on
I'd
at
rather just control it myself. I feel like I'm one with the paint.
Yeah.
But you'll see, like, this is not a lot of damage to the paint. When I lift up and dry it, yeah, you're going to be like, oh my God, what'd she do? But we're not really removing a lot of clear by doing this.
Do you remember how thick it was up here? Like,
It was like 4 point something. And again, we'll do our paint thickness gauge after for me to show you just how little we are removing. Pardon my arm.
It's probably worth noting too, like the top of this roof is where it gets like the
So-
most abuse from UV rays.
Yeah, and you saw what we did with the KXK sanding marks. Like,
Yeah.
this is so much finer. And like, you can actually like go to town a little bit more on some of this.
so this one you can apply more pressure than the sand grit.
A little bit. And you can like, if you put this on a polisher, like 2 seconds, like bzz, bzz, that's like what you would do. I am spending a little bit more time just because I'm trying to not be super aggressive. I'm just trying to kind of level down some of these longer linear scratches that you guys have. And I'm using more of my shoulder than, like, I'm moving my arm just like this, so I'm not like,
Yeah.
that's why I'm shaking the whole car, because I am trying to let my arm absorb versus the actual pad.
And I feel like when you do the movement with your arm rather than your wrist, you get like not as harsh as scratches when you're little tiny one back and forth versus the long motions you were doing.
A tool like this is great in situations like this where you don't want to be super aggressive on a scratch, or maybe you have a heavy buildup of contaminants on the paint. This is a great way to quickly knock them off. So here I am using their wool polishing pad and their compound to try to remove some of the finer scratches that maybe even my sanding tool did not go after. This is a great pad for a little bit of heavier correction. We're going to have micro marring or haze that we'll have to finish down as well.
So we were like 3.8, 4.3. We really didn't remove a lot of clear coat, and I wasn't chasing 100% from a distance. When you look at it now, there's no bucket outline. We've blended, we've refined. Again, if you want to chase that, you can, but you're going to be removing more clear coat. For me, the biggest areas that are prone to oxidation: roof, hood, trunk. And those are the areas that I'm trying to preserve as much clear coat as possible. So, like, realistically, yeah, we could try to go over this a little bit more here, but the rest of this outline area, most people are not that tall that they're going to be getting up on there.
Especially me.
Especially you. That realistically, like, unless the sun is shining right down on that, would you notice that?
No.
Okay, so again, there's different approaches that you could take. I try to just improve than perfect.
I think that makes most sense because realistically, the first 24 hours this car's out in this garage is probably gonna get another scratch somehow.
Yeah,
So it's like-
and knowing Skylar and the way you guys abuse your vehicles and stuff, you're going to get more scratches and stuff. So
I trust you.
I'm just going to kiss this out where I want to focus on, so that way I don't venture off that path.
So is this you trying to perfect it?
This is me just trying to go after what I think is attainable for you. Like here, I think we can get this with the microfiber. We'll finish up with the white polishing. We have more than enough paint here. I'm gonna do like 2-3 quick passes. I'm not gonna like sit. But just because it's you, I'm going after it.
Rather than use the 5-inch polishing pad, we're just using the micro polisher to try to strategically focus on some of those deeper scratches with the microfiber pad. It's a touch more aggressive than the wool polishing pad. And then we'll come in and polish with our white polishing pad, white polish to remove the marring that we induce with that pad. and then we'll be able to determine where we're finally at. All in all, we did 3,000 grit wet sanding with the X foam back pad, and then we did 2 rounds of compounding and polishing.
So, bucket be gone. You still have some deeper ones here, but way more blended, way less noticeable. But unless you have a trained eye and you're looking for it, you're not going to see it.
Looks really good from this angle.
So, personally, that's where I would land. I wouldn't necessarily need to go further. These areas here that we have some deeper scratches, because they're so close to the edge, that would make me nervous to like chase it.
Yeah.
But we've at least like blended it a little bit. So personally for me, I am at all times trying to be conscientious of the clear versus chasing my ego. It's not about a before and after picture or 50-50. It's about making sure your vehicle isn't screwed up.
Right.
That's more important than my ego.
But for those that enjoy before and afters, here's our before and here's our after. Because this paint is more on the medium scale, we did a test spot with their yellow foam pad and their fine compound, and we actually found that it corrected better, finished down perfectly. So instead of doing the white pad with the ultra finishing polish, we switched gears and did the yellow foam pad and the yellow fine compound, and it almost perfected this paint by the time we were done. Sometimes beginner detailers struggle with doing side panels because they struggle with how to turn the polisher as it gets lower on the vehicle. Skylar did a fantastic job though of just quickly understanding those minor adjustments that you need to make to ensure that the pad stays flat on the panel. I was so proud of him. Now that we had our wet sanding and heavy correction out of the way and we had figured out what product and pad combination were going to give us the best results, Rich and I jumped in about 30 minutes time total. The 3 of us were able to polish this vehicle, get it prepped for ceramic coating. The paint turned out fantastic. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the end because we're going to show you guys the finished result in part 2, where we're going to be highlighting a new product from Stoner Car Care. And Skylar's coming to say hi to remind you to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos.
So we went into time lapse and got this done, but what did you think of your first time polishing?
Well, technically it's my second.
Second.
Yeah, first time I sprayed it all over me, so obviously a lot better.
Big
than the first-
improvement.
Yeah, big improvement.
But what were some of the most difficult things for you to figure out with polishing?
Definitely which pad to use.
Okay.
I feel like we didn't deep dive into it,
Okay.
but I think on top of that, just keeping it straight, remembering to pull up the speed, because sometimes I would keep it at 2 and forget to like lock it in and put it up to 6.
And that's where repetition will get that. You know, spread it out with 2, then bump up to your correction speed, which is anywhere from 4 to 6. But as far as like keeping the backing plate and the pad flat, like did that become more comfortable the more you worked with it? I noticed you were getting really good on the side panels here with just kind of keeping the pad flat. But I think, you know, the more curved body lines you have on a car, the more you're just gonna have to be aware of that. But having the stool might have actually been a handicap with some of the lower panels, and so it's just, you know, understanding that concept. But I think you did a fantastic job.
Thanks. You're a fantastic teacher too.
Well, I feel like we learned together. But it turned out fantastic with the Rupes system. We were able to remove some deeper defects, blend some that weren't correctable, but that it's less noticeable. But on this roof section here, it looks completely consistent now. We don't have that bucket etching all over it. So, found it. Good job.
So I guess my only question is, when you go to polish a car and your paint's at like 5 and you polish it once, does that mean you're pretty much one and done?
No, and again, it depends on the approach that you're taking. If you're coming in guns blazing with a rotary wool pad, you know, a heavy cutting compound, Ivan and the guys over at Rag Company actually did a video a while back where they took a rotary, a dual action polisher, and I think another tool, and they did a test to see how much cutting you had to do before you actually burned through the paint. I think they went over 6 rounds of literally sitting 30 seconds straight on the paint.
Jeez.
The dual action polisher actually burned through the paint faster than the rotary. And that's where he's teaching me a lot. He will actually cut with a dual action and finish with a rotary. Most people do it reverse. But I got to work with the rotary yesterday, and that's one thing that I would encourage you to try on a test panel in the future. Rotary can actually correct faster and finish down better sometimes because of less of that dual action motion. But most people think that because of the rotary, what we know in the past, people would send it at speed 6, you know, guns blazing. If you keep it at a low speed, like 1 or 2, you can still do decent correction and finish down really well, but you're not gonna run that risk of burning the paint. So rotary is a fun thing, I think, for you to build up to.
Yeah.
But with the dual action polisher, even if you keep it at speed 4 or 5, you're really not gonna do that much damage. You saw even with wet sanding, compounding, and polishing this section here, we didn't remove that much
Not at all.
clear coat. And so I would say each time you're polishing, and David even encouraged me from O'Burke, like if you take paint thickness readings before and after to understand, you know, your standard 1 step, where were you at before, where were you at after, it will help you have an idea moving forward. You don't have to do it every time, but how much clear you're removing from the vehicle. And you want to keep that on the forefront, but we were probably, you can either measure in mils or microns. Normally we do mils, you know, anywhere from 3 to 5 mils, but I would say heavy correction, and that's where we're doing a compound and then a polish with using a more aggressive correcting compound.
Yep.
When you start getting into that low 3s, that's where I would say 1 and done.
Yeah.
But when you've got like 5 mils of paint, you probably have a few rounds, but that's where you don't necessarily have to. Maintenance is key to help prevent those swirls and scratches. You know, don't go through the automatic car wash, using the proper wash media and drying media, soaps that have good lubrication, drying aids to give you lubrication even as you're drying. All of those things help prevent the swirls and scratches. But if you buy a new to you used car and it's got 5 mils, 4 mils of paint, you can do a heavy correction, and then from that point forward, that's where I would tell people, if you get a ceramic coating on a vehicle, the best advantage to having a ceramic coating is that when you do wash your vehicle, you are not going to have to be as aggressive. Dirt will come off with less effort. Even high pressure water alone, majority of the dirt's gonna come off. When you come in with your wash media, you can literally just like use one finger to direct the wash pad over it, and then use your ceramic drying aid for extra lubrication, dry with a microfiber, and you're going to induce way less damage on the paint. And so that ceramic coating becoming that sacrificial layer on top of the vehicle, which you're gonna have, you'll find, one, yes, it is a sacrificial layer on top of the clear coat, but it will help make maintenance easier, so that way you don't have to be as aggressive. Bugs come off with high pressure, you don't have to scrub, because the number one way that scratches are induced to the vehicle, either from buckets or improper washing and drying methods. So if you can have protection on your vehicle, either wax, sealant, or coating is more durable, that's what's really going to help prevent that. Most of the customers that I see have nothing on their vehicle. So when they come in to wash it, water is sticking to it, dirt is sticking to it. They're taking all of that dirt, which is microscopic rock chips, and just abrading it all over the vehicle. So having good protection on your vehicle is going to help prevent this moving forward. But even if you have, you know, swirls and scratches moving forward in the future, you know, you don't want to necessarily, now that we're going to coat this, you don't want to necessarily polish because you'll remove the coating. But that's why we've prepped the panels as much as we could, removing the defects, because now we're locking in the condition of the paint. Okay. Does that answer a little bit as far as that?
For sure.
So, but any other questions you have? You said that figuring out the polishing pad, that was probably the hardest one.
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, because you can have Lake Country, you can have Buff Shine, you can have Eurofiber, you can have 3D, you know, the Rupes, they all have different systems in play. I would say pick one, start off that way before you buy all of them and try to mix and match, because oftentimes the pad and the polish are going to work synergistically together and just enhance one another. And as a detailer, you know, sometimes we'll pick and choose based on, it's kind of like musical chairs, like, oh, I want to work with that one today. Or maybe we know that one product will work better on certain paint. But even Jason Rose said to me, like, if you were to grab a Lake Country pad and a Rupes polish, you could be the first person in history to combine those two together as far as for testing, because they never tested that out. So you're really a guinea pig. And so if you go with systems that have been designed to work well together, you're going to have a better chance of better results.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I would say keep it simple to start. you know, get the system that you are wanting to work with,
Don't
you know,
mix and match
whichever
right away.
one it is.
Yeah.
You know, and go from there. And then if you find that you're not getting the results that you're looking for, that's where you would maybe try out a different system, you know, just to get the results. But it really, sometimes we do overcomplicate it by testing different things out and just seeing what, you know, we watch all these YouTube videos and everyone says, this is the best pad ever, this is the best polish ever.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta try that. But then we're mixing and matching, and you never know what results you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you do run a chance sometimes with getting inconsistent results when you mix and match, but you know, the Rupes system did fantastic on this, and I think we chose the right products for the job.
It looks good.
So Ford paint, Rupes, yellow pad, yellow polish did a great job.
Sweet.
So, all right, so now we're going to do a panel prep wipe, remove all the polishing oils, and then we're ready to apply the coating.
Sweet.
Okay,
I'm ready.
let's do it.
Stay tuned for that in our part 2, which is coming up very soon.